Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Weymouth Dream Yacht Charter um, race briefing. I'm here with Will McGough, who's the expert navigator from Just So, and he's going to give us the insight into the course. I'm going to cover off a few housekeeping things to make things a bit easier for us. So I'm just going to share my screen and just cover a few points. So firstly, our sponsor for the race is Dream Yacht Charter. Just to let you know that JOG members get 10% discount on Dream Yacht Charter bookings, and Dream Yacht Charter contribute 5% to the Generation JOG fund of any booking from a JOG member, which is obviously quite useful for our youth members. For this race, winning boats in each IRC class will get a voucher for £500 towards a Dream Yacht booking. So that's quite a substantial amount. You can probably knock a third off a booking. So that's the end of the advertising segment. Other than the Generation Jog class, which is sponsored by Henry Lloyd. So for the race to Weymouth, the winning Generation Jog boat gets to nominate their Generation Jog member, who will get a £600 Henry Lloyd voucher, as long as they haven't won it before. So if they have won it before, it gets passed to the next person on the boat or the next boat that came second or third. Obviously, social media is important to us. It's important to our sport. So if you do take some photos or videos, please use the Jog Racing hashtag, and also use the hashtag for Dream Yacht Charter, which is Dream Yacht Global. And we look forward to seeing all your videos and the photos as well. So the first thing I'm going to cover is it's going to be a very busy start area. The Festival of Sail, which is the Ocean Globe race, leaves Cowes at 8 a.m. Onwards. So there'll be quite a few boats and support boats in the area. We're hoping that they would have cleared through before the first start, but be wary of them. There's also a smaller race going on from Rourke. There's 40 boats from there starting at 9 a.m. heading in the same direction. So if you see a Volvo 70 coming down behind you, down the Solent, just bear in mind that with its kite up, it probably doesn't have a great deal of maneuverability. So it's probably better to let it go through than to try and luff it up or something. The start line for the race. I apologise again for reusing this photo, and I promise to the person that owns this boat that I will never use this again. But it's quite a useful photo because it looks to be a downwind start from Gurnard, and Gurnard's got some sharp parts to it. So it's east to west start. The VHF channel is 37A. There are no indications at the moment that they're going to use the extended start line, but the standard start line is from the jog box or the race officer's box on the shoreline at Egypt Point through to Gurnard. The only thing I would say is that we've had quite a few protests this season, and they've all been around the start line. So our start line typically, is not square to the wind. So just make sure you give plenty of room to boats, and remember Gurnard is quite a sharp object and pretty heavy as well. If the line is extended, there'll be a bright turquoise blue flag, and then the line is all the way over to northeast Gurnard, all the way up to the jog box, but northeast Gurnard is not necessarily on the line. You can also go inside of Gurnard Buoy. The finish line is a bit funky for this race. So you can see here there's a picture of the finish line. And essentially there's a line drawn between a pole, which is grey in colour, through to the North Wedge DG range buoy. The thing to be, obviously, what you need to do here is pass that buoy, the yellow buoy, close to port. You can see that there are shallowing areas and rocks as soon as you cross the finish line. So if you've got a kite up, for example, you probably want to be thinking about taking that down before or just before you get to the finish line, and certainly don't carry on in the same direction. So, head to port and just be wary of this diagram. Those rocks do exist. I've seen them, and I've seen a boat on those rocks as well. And they're not the normal soft rocks.
I think so. Just on the finish, it's worth highlighting. If I believe this right, this is the same finished direction and setup as last year, but is different to previous years. So if you didn't do last year's Weymouth race, it's different to what you've done before. But if you did do last year's Weymouth race, it's the same as that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We also have a question about the extended line. I believe if we use the extended line, it'll be on WhatsApp and VHF, but that's not 100%. I don't know if you are aware, Stuart.
Yeah, so if we use the extended line, there'll be a turquoise flag, and it will be announced on VHF and on WhatsApp also. So yeah, you're right about the finish line. I can't stress enough that you need to be careful of these rocks that are just past the finish line. As always, as soon as you finish, then you'll have a finish decoration. So the link will be sent to you. It'll be sent to the mobile on board that's registered on the race entry in MyJog via text. You'll also get it via email. And please, as soon as you can, obviously clear the rocks first and then do your finish decoration. Just to remind people that didn't see this for the Lonely Tower race, is that if you do need to do a protest, which we obviously encourage if people have broken the rules or you feel they've broken the rules, then you can do this online. So you go to the notice board, and then there's a button that shows you the protest board, and you can create a protest, a request for redress, or make a scoring inquiry online. And this obviously helps you do it within the time limits, which, just to reiterate, are 2 hours from the finish time, or your finish time. So if you retire, the time you retired is your finish time. Berthing and social arrangements. So Weymouth Harbour are going to be very busy. There's 60 or up to about 60 boats that are going to be looking to moor up there from our race. If you call them as you're approaching the harbour on channel 12, they'll give you instructions. An email was sent out earlier today just to give you provisional berthing ideas that the harbour had come up with. And essentially, they'll give you two options. There'll be this smaller draft boats on the left or port side as you come into Weymouth Harbour, and then the other boats will be on the starboard side along the mooring area there. So, and we will be rafted. The other thing I say is provisionally, depending on wind, we'll cover that soon. We have put 1,800 hours in as the prize giving, and that's going to be at the Weymouth Sailing Club. So if you're berthed up on the starboard side, then it's a little bit of a walk, but it's a good bit of exercise, and try not to get distracted by the pubs. So you basically walk down across the bridge and then come back on yourself. Or if you're lucky enough, there's a little rowing boat that will row you across for a small fee. I'm not sure when he operates to, but that can save you 20 minutes of walking. So that's the Weymouth Yacht Club. They They are putting food on informally, so, and you don't need to book that. So if you want to eat at Weymouth Yacht Club, you can do so. But obviously, you know, we'd like to see there at prize giving. And if there are any changes to the time for prize giving, we'll announce it on WhatsApp. So make sure that you are in the WhatsApp group. You can do that by going to the Notice Race online and you'll see the group there. So finally, I'm going to hand over to Will. I've covered all the boring stuff. So Will's going to cover the weather and course briefing using Predict Wind. So over to you, Will.
Thank you very much, Stuart. I apologise if I come through a little bit muffled. I've got a bit of a cold, so I'm a bit congested. So if you look at the sort of overall weather for the weekend, what we've got is this high pressure sort of making its way in through over the UK through tomorrow, and by Saturday is pretty well established over the middle of Ireland and moving sort of over the middle of the UK. So unlike most of the event or the preceding two jog weekends, it should give us some nice light northerlies and sunshine. What if you then sort of what that brings us into for our race course, if you look at the detail, give it a minute to load. You look sort of Saturday morning-ish, we're getting northerly, maybe a bit of northeasterly, probably around 10 knots, sort of gusts of 15 coming off the land. And then as you work your way west down the course and as time goes on, it is going to drop a little bit down the course. What I will say is if you zoom out a bit and look at the big picture, if obviously we're 36 hours-ish from the first start, if that high location is further east, the forecast will come in quite a bit. It will come in quite a bit lighter than the current forecast. If it's a bit further west, it will come in a bit windier than the forecast. So there is quite a bit of chance there that it could be that there's a bit of variability depending on the exact location of that high. And as you can see, if you zoom sort of in on the racetrack, most of the forecasts have some version of this big light patch just to the west of Portland. So if that is probably 20 miles, 50 miles east, it could be quite a light day. And then obviously in forecasting, that's almost 20 miles of the position of a high is almost nothing. So keep an eye on that as we get closer to the race course, but generally expecting quite a pleasant day, 10 to 15 knots northerly through the course. Course-wise, it is pretty much a straight line. The marks of the course to be aware of is there is effectively a gate between the Needles and Bridge. So it's start to the west from the usual start line, down the course, round both Anvil and St Albans, and into the finish. So if I zoom in on the courses and we'll start talking, and please feel free to ask questions as we go. Start wise, Stuart's touched on this, but with the wind direction, I'm expecting the leg to be an almost a straight broad reach on starboard. So Gurnard will be the favoured end of the line. However, be careful you're not pushed above it, because obviously you'll have no rights in there. I think for all classes at the start, the tide will have turned at Gurnard. I would recommend if you're in class 4, double checking that, because there's a chance it might not have turned at Gurnard. It might not have turned if the tide's running slightly late. I would also be aware that there might be quite a wind shadow in by the beach, although it will have turned. Obviously, there will be the tide running there, so it's a balance between wind, tide. But my view down the leg is probably that clean air would be my view off the line as the key focus, and clean air and pressure. Down down the leg from down the Solent, from Cows to Hurst, probably a straight line. And I'm going to be saying that a lot down this leg. There is not that much tactical options, I believe, in this race. I think it's going to be much more around boat speed. And with a northerly wind, I'm expecting it to be quite fluky. I'm expecting big puffs, big shifts, and the potential in both the Solent and in towards the finish, some quite big holes. So very much eyes out the boat, looking for pressure and wind, and focusing a lot more on that than the bigger sort of tactical tidal or left right upbeat sort of decisions. Out the Solent, hit the red, well, hit the right hand edge along the red cans for maximum tide, probably looking at minimum distance, aiming at bridge as the as a starboard landing mark before the legs straight across the bay. So this is probably going to be the leg with the cleanest air because you're furthest away from the land. Again, all of this from Gurnard all the way down to Durston/Anvil should be kite, should be very pleasant. And yeah, it should hopefully settle down from a breeze point of view as you go across this, tide with the whole way. I ran routings using Predict Wind. For the smallest boat, I had which it's got a polar for, which was the X332. That I could see, sorry, it's the smallest boat on our entry list. I could see a polar for. I might have missed one. If I did, I'm sorry. And even for that, they had them making the finish before the tide turned. So about 3:30. What I will say is I think the routings I'm seeing and running are a little optimistic because I think there is going to be more wind shadow than it's giving credit to from the land. Which brings me on to probably one of the interesting tactical point, which is along the cliffs here. So there's going to be a balance. Tide should still be with, so you shouldn't have to go in to get out the tide. If everything's light and we're running later, it's going to dramatically change all of this. But the key balance for me is going to be between shortest distance of straight line and the wind shadow. I'm expecting quite a big hole under these cliffs. I think most of us have sailed quite close to these. They're pretty high. With a pure north or northeast, there's going to be a lot of blocking. So how much extra distance, how far offshore you want to go is going to be impossible to say till we get close and we can look at the water and the sea state around there. But I'd keep a close eye and try and work out how close you want to go. If, as I say, it could be lighter than forecast, if we're all getting here and the tide's starting to turn, that then obviously adds in the extra element of at what point do you go in for tidal relief, and then it will become a very interesting picture. The last leg, again, I would expect is a bit tighter, so having been kite all the way to St Albans, depending on pressure, angle, your exact sail setup, could be code 0 if you've got one, could still be kite. It could be jib if it's gone a little bit further west of north. So that will be a call to make at St Albans and then pretty much straight line in to the finish. As I said, I would with the northerly wind, I would expect there to be quite shifty, quite fluky coming into the finish. So try and make sure you have eyes out the boat. You're watching all the pressure, looking for holes. Advantage if you can watch something fast in front of you, sail into a hole and go around it. So keep sort of attention and as much as you can. So again, as I sort of going back to what I said straight up at the top, yeah, it's going to be more about boat speed and sort of short pressure tactical decisions rather than anything big. The only key question, as I see it from a tactics point of view, is how close into the cliffs you go. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions.
Well, do you think, I've seen 3 tactics from your point 4 to the finish is, one is going offshore, one of them is taking a straight line and the other's going inshore. So are you on the fence with that, or are you going to tell us what you might do?
I'm on the fence, Stuart. I would say that unless we're getting here much later than we're anticipating, so not getting to Anvils until say 2 o'clock, maybe 2:30, I wouldn't see inshore paying, because the only reason to go inshore there, in my opinion, would be to get out the tide.
Yeah.
But in terms of run line versus offshore, don't know. And I could still be wrong. It could be the wind could be doing some weird and wonderful funneling thing around the headland. And actually, I'm wrong. And there's 15 to 20 knots there and 8 knots there. So I'm going to hedge, Stuart, until I've got close enough to see it. And then even then, we probably won't know what the right option was until we get to the bar.
Yeah, and we're gonna have a bet on the first boat to finish, what time that's gonna be.
No.
I'm
not
gonna
this
go
far
for
out, Stuart.
3:45. That's my prediction.
I'd have to go look at the entry list to see what the fastest things are, Stuart.
Yeah, I think my prediction is most boats will finish between 3:45 and 5:30. But you know, that doesn't really take into account any big wind holes that we might find on the course. So obviously they're best avoided. And then I think, yeah, I think the first class off will probably have tide against them.
So
in what we've seen, potentially we'll have a little bit of tide against them.
It was interesting. When I was looking at winning tides earlier, it was saying it had turned at Gurnard at the start to go west, but not once you got between sort of down here between Gurnard Ledge and Saltmead. That was at bang on 9 o'clock. So
Yeah.
because it turns very early at Gurnard, but the rest of the Solent might not have caught up.
Okay, we'll
But
see.
I'd agree, it's marginal. I'd keep an eye on it as well, Stuart.
And then I think, as I said before, I think the Rourke fleet coming through, they've obviously got some very fast boats. So, that'll make for some interesting sailing with 100 boats going down the Solent. But, just look behind you, because some boats you probably just want to avoid. But, if it's all relatively downwind, then that'll all be fine. It's just, I'm keen to avoid any more protests from Gurnard. So just remember that, you might not have room there. Okay, is there anything else you want to cover, Will?
That's everything on my list, but I'll stay around for a minute or two in case there's any questions.
Let's see if we get any more questions. We haven't got any at the moment. Obviously, everyone's been a bit shy, as they always are. They don't want to give away their tactics. A question stroke remark from Will Wilkinson. Tactics don't get stuck under a Volvo 70. It's 110 foot tall, which I completely agree with. Okay, I think we're done then, Will. Thanks very much. We really look forward to seeing everyone in Weymouth. I hope everybody can make it to the prize giving. Like I said, if it's looking like boats are going to arrive late, then we might push it back half an hour, an hour. But the initial plan is to aim for 1800 hours.
See you there.
Good luck, everyone. Cheers.